Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Anyone out there? I'm back again today. Hi, Victoria. How are you? Hello, 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 hello. If you're just joining us, can we just have a reaction? Where are you joining us from? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Sincerely Agile with Mary. It will be nice to see where you're joining us from. Hello again, Mobula, Grace, Victoria, how are you? Thank you for joining me today. Thank you as always for joining me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, you have joined me on this platform where we promote the lean agile mindset, a platform where we learn, unlearn, and relearn, a platform where we can make change agents of ourselves, essentially. That is what this platform is all about. So please share with your friends, share with your, on your timeline if you like, share with your network so that more people can join us, so that we can have an awesome time. Today, we're going to be looking at authentic leadership. And I have a guest that will be joining me shortly. Yeah, I have Mobala from Zurich. Yep. I have Grace from Abuja. I have my daughter, my great fan, Victoria. Let's have some reaction. Where are you calling from? I can see more people joining. Okay. Hello, Jumoke. Nice to have you here. Nice to have you here. Okay. So today we are going to be looking at authentic leadership. Our topic for today is authentic leadership in COVID times. Authentic leadership in COVID times. And Ian Gill will be joining me. Maybe in about 5 minutes, he'll be joining me. And he's an Agilist as well. So we're going to be dissecting the whole concept of authentic leadership at a time like this, because leadership is so critical. Leadership is so critical. And I have a quote here on the screen, actually, that says, "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power." Now, this is so profound. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. And we see this playing out all the time. We see it playing out all the time. The pages of history tells us about great leadership and not so great leadership. Suffice to say that that is still the trend today. And with social media, I guess we can say good leadership can be very easily amplified, as much as very bad leadership can be very easily amplified. But the one thing we need to remember is that the consequences are far-reaching. So when we talk about leadership, we have that position of authority. What stance do we take in that position? What stance? How are we even, aware of how we show up as a leader? That is what our discussion is all about today. How do we show up as a leader? Bearing in mind that the consequences of good or bad leadership are far-reaching. It may even take generations to correct, the damage that bad leadership may have cost. It may take generations to correct it. So the consequences are far-reaching. And on that note, I want to share this proverb. It's a Yoruba proverb. It says, Orúkọ rere sàn ju wúrà àti fàdákà. That translates to, a good name is better than silver and gold. Now, I remember as a young girl growing up in Lagos, we hear this so many times. I've heard this a zillion times growing up. Power is intoxicating. Omobi says power is intoxicating. Absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolute power. Yes, thank you very much. That is correct. Absolute power corrupts absolute power. So it takes, a lot of awareness. It takes a lot of, intentionality to know that when we are in these leadership positions, it needs to be used the right way. I love the fact that you say power is intoxicating, and indeed it can be intoxicating. And Ronke here says true. So back to the proverb. Are you familiar with that proverb? Orúkọ rere sàn ju wúrà àti fàdákà. Are you familiar with that proverb? Do we have any Yorubas in the audience? Is this a proverb you're familiar with? How many times did you hear this proverb growing up? How many times did your parents tell you about this proverb? Yes, he said yes. You heard it a zillion times, I'm sure. And I'm sure you've said the same thing to your children. So yes, absolutely. Kemi too is saying the same thing. We heard it all the time. Now, on that note, let me share a story with you. Now, I lost my dad when I was about 15 years old. So, which means my younger sister, who is the last, born in the family, must have been about 8 years old, 9 years old at the time. Meaning by, 9, she didn't have a father, essentially. Now, 17 years later, she was working in a bank, Zenith Bank to be precise, and a customer walks in, and she had her badge on her. And my family name is quite an unusual name. It's not a very common name. It's not a very common Isha name. And this gentleman saw her name, and he made the connection very quickly. This must be that little girl he used to see, because my dad used to take my sister to the office at the weekends when he had stuff to do. He worked as an engineer with a printing press. So when he saw the name, he said, "Are you that little girl? Are you David's daughter, David Oviemada's daughter?" And she said, "Yes." And this man made a scene out of that. He made a scene out of that, and he just started talking about my father. Now, imagine how my sister must have felt at that moment, especially given how young she was when we lost our dad. That was one incident. Another incident was, I went to see somebody. It was a business meeting. And believe me, the first 45 minutes, this gentleman was just talking about my father. That was quite emotional for me. He was just talking about my father. And I have often said that my father was my first agile coach. He lived the mindset to the T. And all the lessons, all the wisdom, they are still with me today. So my father was my first agile coach. So as you can see, leadership in any setting, whether we're talking about the family setting, within a small community or a large community, within our work environment, because this was someone who worked with my father. They worked in the same establishment or in the wider society. If leadership is terrible today, it will be amplified and it will be out there for the world to see. So we all need to be very, very, very mindful. And that is why I have with me today Ian Gill to dissect the subject of authentic leadership. I'm going to bring Ian on the screen now. Hello, Ian.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm very pleased. A little bit nervous.
Really?
I've got my confidence elixir with me.
You always have your glass of wine.
Absolutely. Well, not in the morning. In the evening, it's perfectly fine. But I'm really pleased to be here on Sincerely Agile with you, Mary. And I'm wearing a tie. I did say to the lovely Mrs. Gill, she said, "Why are you wearing a tie?" She was quite shocked. I don't think I've worn one for 2.5 years. I said, I'm on Mary's show. And she goes, "Who's this Mary?" And she goes, "Oh," I said, "she's very smart. She's always incredibly well presented as well. So she knows the word holacracy, well presented. I'm going to have to spruce up my..."
Honestly, you're looking great, Ian. You look great all the time anyway.
I'm the best I haven't had it cut for 2 months. It's a disaster.
It's so nice to have you on the show, Ian. And I absolutely appreciate your time here today, the time you're investing here today. And it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So we've got Ian here, and I did say to him, I'm sure I would beat him on the makeup, but I think he's beat me hands down on the, on the dressing up with the tie, So
the tie might go. It's very tight.
Thank you so much, Ian. So we're going to be looking at the subject of authentic leadership in COVID times.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that COVID gave leadership a boot camp in agility? What's your take on that? Because, of course, we both work as Agilists. Not every single organization has taken on that mindset. And COVID has come and sort of like pushed everyone off the cliff. So what's your take on this? Has COVID, given leadership a boot camp in agility?
It's a great question. I mean, I think it's given them boot, probably in their nether regions. I mean, it's not like the COVID virus was unpredicted, actually. I mean, governments have been looking at a virus. We've had a few things like avian flu and what have you. And we do disaster recovery planning, but I don't think anybody expected this wholesale. Well, they may not have really expected this more exotic wholesale change, not just in companies, but in government, in consumer behavior, but people, families. It's across the world.
Absolutely.
And it's therefore kind of the classic burning platform. And as Agilists, you think, how do you get energy for change? You need to be quite fundamental to get hold of the organization. And I think, and undoubtedly, COVID must have asked every leader to have a good look at, well, first of all, look at the budget and think, well, whatever I thought, that's out the window. You're saving pennies, or your organization is now having incredible growth. I mean, if you're in logistics and healthcare, you're probably quite well. If you're in retail and hospitality, you're struggling. And so you think, well, what do we do? Do we just give up? Do we just give up, or do we start innovating? So I think the first thing is, do we start accelerating and changing behavior? And I think the thing that first happened is a lot of things that used to get in the way, admin, wait for leadership decision, that stopped. Get people working, get them at home. How do we connect them? What do we deal with security? How do we deal with that? So all of a sudden, you're presented with challenges and you've got to go bum, 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 answer them. So I think removing constraints and getting the business working and collaborating, probably the first sort of agile sense. I think it was more directed rather than collaborative. You probably had to put your officer's hat on. But I think the first thing is, oh my goodness, get the organization to stand up in a new way. I think, sorry.
Yeah, before I actually, respond to that, I just want to very quickly introduce you properly, because I've just got your bio in now. Ian is a director at Agility by Nature, a network of highly experienced digital technology associates who helped companies foster great business agility. With a career spanning over 30 years, he has worked as a freelancer in software, retail, logistics, media, education, publishing, insurance, banking, government, and financial times, where he introduced Agile. Born and brought up in the analog world of abacuses, phone boxes, and cars with no electric windows or the ability to speak with you, he considers himself lucky not to be a techie, given the speed of technology change. At the heart of it all, working with people is what makes Ian tick. And he is the host of Agility by Nature podcast, on SoundCloud. Now, you have your own show
Yes.
on SoundCloud. So when you came up saying you're nervous, I'm thinking, why would you be nervous? You have your own show. But today now you're on the other side. You're on the other side today. That's it. You're on the other side.
Easy to ask questions. All consultants ask questions. Coming up with answers isn't so easy.
Absolutely. Now, going back to what you said, the burning platform, did we have to wait for that burning platform? Because this is what I have often said. We had the infrastructure. A lot of organizations, about 50% of their employees could have been working from home in the last 5 years, 7 years, maybe. So we had the infrastructure. The infrastructure was not the problem. The impediment, it was the mindset that was the impediment.
Yep.
It was that we've always worked like this. We need to continue working like that, essentially, until COVID, like we say, gave us all a boot camp in agility. Now with this COVID situation, what possible shift do leaders have to make or still have to make right now? What possible shift do they need to make? I mean, you've talked about, putting on their hat and, looking at the administrative side of things and cutting down on the administrative side of things, probably looking at more enabling environments so they can work remotely. But in terms of behaviors, what possible shift are we looking at?
I think you make a really good point about the mindset, and all change invariably is about mindset, in my opinion. I think if nothing else, 2020 and the COVID moment, and I'm talking from a Western point of view, UK point of view, I'm not across the world.
Yeah.
I think this has to be the moment for empathy. Yes, we've had people working from home, but we've probably not had so many people working from home for so long with so many people. And we know adapting to Zoom, and we have been given the privilege as organizations to go into people's homes. And real life's messy. There's children, there's toys. Not everybody has got an internal office. There's some houses with 5 or 6 people all sharing the bandwidth and the noise and the Zoom calls. And I talk quite loudly, please be quiet, I'm on a call as well. Mm-hmm. And people are using ironing boards for desks.
Yeah.
That's stressful. That's stressful. And I think now leaders really have to think about, right, okay, we are really questioning, do people really understand the purpose of my overarching goals of this organization? The purpose, is it clear? Do I now have to restate that? How do I now engage with people? I've taken it for granted. I've probably not really engaged with people even when they're in the same office. Now my leaders and my management team have to engage, because everybody is considering the organization they work for, their role in it, and how they operate. And they've got to look after whatever's going on in their real life and deal with the new ways of working. So the new ways of working have to be collaborative, self-organizing, and leaders now have to really think about the systems of work, which is where they should be. Managers should be managing the system of work. They don't manage the work. The people doing the work manage the work. So leaders now are going to have to sort of really think about servant leader, which is classically an agile thing. They really think about real connection and be really clear now about outcomes and goals.
Yeah.
And really, we're talking about now your real principles and the values and the behaviors of your organization. Is it principles? Is it values? Or is it that classic old British management of measuring a lot of stuff, usually crap stuff like points and attendance and hours and, all that nonsense, which adds very little real value and certainly is in no way engaging to me. I couldn't give a stuff. But now leaders have to grasp that. So I think we need to talk about the skill sets. If you're not really a great coach, this is the time to do some reading. If you really aren't a great engaging conversation, I'm not saying a Churchillian conversation, let's go. Proper conversations.
Yeah.
Where you're talking to your real people and onboarding their points of view, about the way things are done, in a way that they do it without fear. Those safe environments where it's really listened to.
Yeah.
I think where you probably should be looking up Judy Rees and clean language, where you take your prejudice and your sense out of the picture, and we have proper, probably uncomfortable conversation remotely. So you and your management team are now going to have to shift to a very different behavior to really get the innovation, the responsiveness, and the alertness to deal with what on earth is coming down the line. Because I don't know. If I did,
nobody knows. Yeah.
That's not to say I'm not expecting foresight from leaders and thinking about the long. They belong in a world where they are thinking what's coming down the line. They are thinking about scenarios, and they're setting outcomes, but not ridiculously tiny targets. And we need to think about how we thread those goals so that people can participate and achieve them.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and my fear, to be honest, Mary, is I think we have a lot more empathy because everybody's had a horrible experience or good experience.
Exactly.
They know it. My feeling this year is we might just start returning back to old models. We've gone there, we've done it, and we get lazy. We don't consciously become good at what we've learned, and we forget it because it's hard and it's difficult and it's not the model of management, So that's my big worry. So what do people need to learn? Don't forget what they've learned already would probably be my first step.
Yeah, I really like you said that, because we encounter this in our workspaces all the time. Because as change agents, as Agilists, what are we trying to do? When we talk about helping organizations transition, really what we are saying is, because at the heart of Agile is human transformation, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, guess what? Like you just said, once there's a slight problem, we tend to retract into old behaviors. So I like the fact that you're saying, you know what? When this is almost all over, are we going to now start going back to the old models? I hope not, because empathy, like you said, was amplified, I think. The need for safety was amplified. And another thing that I like that seemed to have come to the fore is the fact that it seems we are all now more in touch with humanity. So yes, I'm on a video, maybe my background doesn't look, crisp. That's okay. A baby's crying, that's okay. I have to quickly attend to, a child who is having their homework done, or you hear my children screaming in the background. That is okay. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago on Sky TV, I think it was, this gentleman was having a live interview, and I think the baby, the toddler, came into the picture, and you should have seen how the wife, do you remember that clip? You should have seen how the wife rushed in the, oh my God, kind of thing, and just took the baby away. Today, that wouldn't matter.
Well, I'd hope not. I mean, I think, we have children. We have
exactly.
dogs,
exactly. It looked unusual at the time, but what I'm saying now, that today that almost looks normal, and it's okay. And I think it is okay. So as Agilists, we have been talking for a long time. We have been working to help organizations, and people transition to this way of working. But in as much as, a lot of organizations have managed to make that transition, there are still organizations out there, well, pre-COVID, almost, before COVID, where this whole idea of I'm the boss, I'm the leader, I'm the hero, I set the direction, I even tell you what to do, I tell you where we're going, and I tell you how we get there. Okay? And you wonder, why would anyone employ such great minds? Because this is the question I ask all the time. Because organizations go to great lengths to employ the best. And then you bring this amazing, people into your organization, and you're telling them what to do. You're not leveraging the capabilities they bring to the table. So I've also often imagined how such organizations managed in this, environment, because for me, I believe that the organizations that had started their agile transformation had, it was a bit of a walk in the park for them in terms of business continuity. So with such leaders, I can imagine the difficulty that they may be having in their organization. This definitely cannot work in this environment. It will not work. It will not work. So we need, I'm thinking, which is what we have been preaching, if you like, what we call holacracy.
Holacracy, yeah.
Yeah. Because what we've been saying is we should, give power to the teams. We talk about self-organizing teams, self-directing teams, but sometimes we go into these organizations, you hear the teams complaining, aren't we supposed to be agile? Aren't we supposed to be self-organizing? We are still being micromanaged.
Yeah.
We are still being heavily micromanaged, whereas that shouldn't be the case. So with holacracy right now as an operating model, will it be more fully embraced, do you think, by leaders today for much more responsiveness? Will teams actually have that autonomy that Agile promotes? Will they be truly, left to, self-organize? What do you think?
I don't think, well, if we think of holacracy as it's self-organization throughout. Yeah. So you can choose what you work on, you're responsible for the outcomes, you can form teams, join teams, leave teams, and it doesn't have that classical top-down. So famously, Zappos is an example of it, Steam is another, Valve is another example of it. They're very rare. They're very rare, and special people have founded those organizations. And I have a feeling that particular people enjoy that environment, but I don't think everybody will enjoy that environment. So as a classical, this is the new operating model for the future, it might be, but I don't think it's going to be a rapid assimilation. I think there's going to be evolution through there. So I think there will still be people who would like to be working at the coalface and are quite comfortable for people setting overall overarching objectives, but they contribute and they're able to respond to rather than fully form things on their own. And not everybody's comfortable with that model. But that's not to say lots of the, I think before we think about the operating model as such, we should think about, well, what's the values and principles in your organization? What do you live by?
What do you live by?
What's important?
Yeah.
And, we all think about leaders, and you can tell leaders by the stories that are told about. You could always tell Mary, she may be a hard grafter and she may demand a lot, but she's always got your back. Those principles are the ones that people will hold up and burnish and treasure. Integrity is probably more important than any given operating model, in my humble opinion. So I think, what I expect from leaders at the minimum is, foresight, clarity about purpose, allow people to bring their own mastery over purpose. I expect also it to be the highest court of constraint removal. Managers and leaders are there to remove constraints, to allow people to do their best, whatever it is, their best selves, to do the best work. We accept things will go wrong. We accept there's experiments. Guardrails and principles are much more interesting than procedures and rules.
Absolutely.
So whether we go all the way to a lot, I think some organizations will find that. I think organizations are going to struggle now to have a purely command, do as I say, top down, driven by the classic TPS reports and appraisals and all that baggage from the good old days that frankly added very little value. It is about, why are we here? What's great about this company? Do we believe it? Do we live it? Biden said something interesting. Now, I'm not going to say I'm a Democrat or Republican because obviously I don't live in that country, but he did say something in his speech which I thought was quite good. And he said, we will, Biden said, we would lead by the power of our example. If you live your principles. So we classically want to see, Johanna Rothman has a brilliant phrase, decriminalize making mistakes. you can experiment, something goes wrong, but you learn.
You learn.
If you have an organization that punishes you, that's not principled. That's not holacracy. It's not principles. It's not good. And you're closing down and you're narrowing your organization to only tell you what you want to hear.
Absolutely.
So absolutely. I do think leadership will still provide guardrails and direction and overall overarching goals. And I think that's what they should do. And I don't have a problem with that. But the ability to participate, to solve problems, to try ideas. I like impact mapping. I like all that good stuff. There's lots of great stuff you can do within a fairly traditional organization. But, let people do the job to a clear, defined, outcome that we're after. A middleman should help coach get the best out of the system, remove things that make the system slow, sluggish, irresponsive, create bad value, collaborate even at the management level. So how are we going to make all these teams get the best out of each other and get help in the right way by helping the system, not helping the people. They know how to do the job. And if they don't, and when they tell you, help them to do the job at that point. Don't tell them how to do the job prematurely. So I'm not sure I've answered you. I'm not.
Well, you have partially answered the question, because what I was actually thinking was, in an agile environment, like I've said before, we often get, I'm not empowered. I'm supposed to be empowered, but I am not empowered. But I also understand that we need leadership to give the direction. But we don't want leadership to tell us how to do it. But we still need leadership to give us that direction. So what we need leadership to do now more than ever is to create clarity, right? Clarity. And I like the fact that you also emphasize on the values. The values, they are so, so important. And it's not just a case of, paying lip service to the values, but actually living those values, walking the talk, so to speak, eating your own dog food, so to speak. I think that is so important.
Absolutely. Every time I've asked people about transformation or programs of change, and let's take the agile word out, let's just get change. Let's get change going. Without a shadow of a doubt, the most commonly said thing, almost universally, is buying at the top to the fundamental change. That means they are also part of the change. I cannot accept this. Oh yes, we're definitely changing, and when push comes to shove, it's what they do rather than what I do. And as soon as you get that, it's not authentic. We don't have authenticity, and the organization will probably have that classic change fatigue, because next year it will be year of the customer, and the year after that will be year of the quality, and all of that marketing shtick that managers are good at, but is nonsense. What a waste.
It doesn't add value. Absolutely. And, you talked about leadership buy-in. Of course, we all know that nothing's ever going to happen if there's no leadership buy-in. But many a time we see a situation where we do have leadership buy-in. They are as authentic as they can possibly be. And then you've got a lot of issues in the management, in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've got all these issues in the middle layer. And during this COVID period, I was just saying to myself, a lot of managers who have been having difficulties, just accepting this agile way of working, what are they going to do now? What are they going to do now? Because now you really do need trust, which is what they were struggling with. Okay, they were struggling with trust, because as a manager in the middle layer, when you get into an agile environment, your role changes. But you become, even, in my opinion, a lot of people think they become less relevant. If anything, you are more relevant, because now you need to take the role of leadership. You need to help create more clarity. You need to help with building capability. And of course, improving the system. Helping them improve the system. Taking the, if I can use the metaphor of a gardener, and in a garden, you want to help all the plants grow, and all the plants will be at different stages probably. So I really do like that metaphor. And now they really need to put on that, empathy hat, work on their emotional intelligence and be as authentic as they can possibly be. So for me, this period, I think, would really have given a lot of managers that resisted that challenge, to get better. So what's your take on that?
Totally agree. I mean, I think, management's hard. And the middle management rump is always one of the potentially tricky parts of any transformation, because they can become dispossessed. And they're sitting there thinking, well, why am I here? Purpose is gone. That immediately causes a worrying situation and a defensive situation. But, you know, if we say, what is the role of that middle management? Let's be clear. It is to manage the system, to be responsive to impediments, to remove constraints, to optimize constraints, to support the people and coach the people as well. And, you know, it really is about that servant leadership model. So I think if you're in the middle management and you're going through transition, regardless of if it's the A word, just the COVID, you know, the digitization of your work, you know, you're being digitized. Simple as that.
Simple
you know,
as that.
I had an app, I'm digital. No. What's happening inside? Something's happening outside. Your customers, your B2B customers, your consumer customers in particular, are finding new ways to do things. They have new problems for you to solve. And if you're not alert to that, so it's not only have you got to worry about what's going on inside, you've got to be a coach, you've got to be a servant leader, you've got to remove impediments. You're not there to manage the day-to-day nitty-gritty hands-on work unless you're invited to do so. Stop helping people.
Yeah.
Get on their nerves. In fact, Johanna Rothman has a great phrase. She says, stop inflicting help. And I thought, when I heard that, I thought, brilliant. Read Johanna. I must admit, the Johanna has released 3 books, Practical Management, recently. Fantastic. If you want to know more about this, get a copy. If you want to think about change of, get Mike Burrows' Agenda Shift. If you want great conversation, Judy Reese, look her up. Some fantastic things there. But remember also, stop being so introspective. Your world around you has changed, but that means new problems. So you're not going to innovate waiting for someone to have a eureka moment in the boardroom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A whole lot has changed and we need to continuously innovate. And I'm really happy you brought up that, you know, word, innovate, because in order for people to innovate, they need to experiment.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And you need to give them that environment for them to experiment. Yeah. When we keep doing command and control, when we keep directing people, telling them what to do, then we are not creating that environment for them to innovate. But before I continue with that, I've got some comment on the screen here. Yeah. Some companies are now installing spyware to see what employees are doing. I mean, this sounds so archaic to me. This is an issue of trust, right?
It's a total breakdown of trust. It's an old school management. And actually, they're not necessarily installed. I mean, Microsoft are rather helpfully telling us how you're using your screen time, etc., etc. You know, the only reason I might be interested personally in that is to find that somebody's working 100 hours a week, in which case I want to stop them, because we are very familiar. And when I did have a job, there was timesheets involved, and I said, right, I'm not interested in the timesheets unless someone does 50 hours a week 3 times in a row. Then I want to know, because that's not healthy behavior.
It's not healthy. And I like the way you've twisted that around, that you would want to know that for good reasons. For good reasons, yeah.
And by the way, there's some people who would like to work 50. They are more comfortable. They are not workaholics. Work is not work for them. It's a different thing. Yeah. But, you know, I think spying on, you know, it's a lack of trust. You haven't really got the confidence in people. And you know, why would you put up with that? You're not going to get the best out of people. You say, well, someone's going to game the system. Well, so what? So what?
And you're going to just create an environment of fear. That is what you're going to do when you do that. You're going to create an environment of fear.
Yeah, I think what you'll find is someone's going to write some Perl script that puts up a lot of activity on their screen that will fool these spyware cameras and spyware overall. So, you know, don't spy on your people. It's
absolutely not nice at all. Now, back to innovation. And of course, as you know, one of the things, you know, we do on this platform is we promote the lean, agile mindset. Yes. And for those who are watching, lean is about minimizing waste. And I have often said it's not just waste in terms of material waste, but waste in terms of, you know, people wasting people's capability. So coming back to the subject of innovation, if we do not create an environment where people can innovate, then it amounts to waste. It amounts to a whole lot of waste. Having, like I said before, gone through the trouble of bringing all these brilliant minds in, only to create an environment of fear. And people will not innovate. If we look at organizations like Google that give, their employees a whole 20 hours, I think it is a week, to just work on whatever makes them tick. I mean, I recall reading how Gmail came about. That is how Gmail came about. I mean, today, if you ask anyone for their email address, if they are not giving you a specific organizational email address, they are giving you a Gmail address. And that emerged from this kind of mindset.
Yeah.
So it really is a mindset that should be, embraced, because there's just so much to gain from it. I'm just trying to see if we have more. So what do you have to say about that, Ian, about the whole idea of not being able to innovate because of the kind of mindset in that environment?
I think innovation is quite an interesting one for me, because a lot of people are leaped straight to the big eureka product release. But of course, innovation could be quite small things, very small things, and they could be process things. There could be internal things. That's why we have a retrospective, don't we?
Yeah.
So that we can review, how did that go? And then what can we do going forward that we can change just like that? And if it doesn't work, go back to the previous state. If it does, we have an advantage. So I think having managers, if you want to be innovative, you're going to have to decide we're going to be innovative. And again, that means the rewards of the organization have to be adjusted so that the organization becomes innovative. You can't have reward systems that say some people who do this, it's not necessarily innovative, but just crunching through sales, are not rewarded by the innovative thing. You're going to have things backing up against each other. So you've got to really think about the organization. Nor is it a little department outside of the organization. I see this model quite a lot, and I worry about it. The fun stuff's over there, then we get bored of it. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you do need to organize something outside the organization. That is, it comes back in. How would you attack your own company?
Yeah.
Those are the questions. If we were competition, how would we attack ourselves? These are things I think are interesting. So I do think if we're going to be innovative, don't just think of it as a product thing. Think of it as a thing that we're looking at all the time, and we're trying to make improvements on how we do things, how we remove constraints, how could we move more quickly, how could we get rid of, how could we automate, how could we on the labor out, how could we put experiments out there in a safe way, bring them back, say that didn't work, and that's absolutely fine.
Absolutely.
As long as you get the asymmetric learning off of it. If you bring it back and you don't learn anything, that's probably waste.
Absolutely. And
we've seen so many organizations who are struggling with digital because they have a very narrow view of it. They see it as an iPhone-y thing. They're not really looking about as, is it a brilliant way to engage customers in a dynamic conversation about their life, removing problems, taking costs out of systems, doing things you've never been able to do, and really change business. If something's really expensive and therefore it is difficult for the vast majority, if you could take huge lumps of cost out, and digital's quite good at that, it can then be socially very widely available. That's why banking is becoming quite an exciting world. Open standard and availability. So that whole world is going to have a lot of change going there. I see a comment there as well. First and foremost, making your employees feel safe before they can even think of. Yeah, totally. I think you've got to make people feel safe anyway. To be honest, before we even go to grandiose experiments, we all have bad days. You should be able to say I'm having a bad day, and your team say, "Okay, that's fine. You're a bit cranky. Yeah, I had a bad day." But if you don't have safe, you're not going to get honesty. If you don't get honesty, you're not going to get great. You're not going to get the best out of your team
at all.
Yeah. If you want, how do you think we should do this, and people don't feel safe, they're going to close their answers down to the safest possible thing they can say, rather than the most fabulous thing they can say.
Absolutely. What I was just thinking now, it's echoing now.
Oh, sorry, is that me?
I don't know, to be honest. Let me bring myself. Is that better?
Well, I wasn't getting much echo, so I was quite happy.
Can you hear me?
I can certainly hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Now, with again this whole idea of remote working, coming back to giving people more autonomy.
Yeah.
Of course, it looks, I mean, it is much more needed now, especially with the remote working and maybe, looking at, time overlap in the way we work. But you and I know that power is not always so easy to let go. Why do we still have people in that space, in that mindset where they find it so difficult to let go of some authority, to decentralize responsibility sometimes, or power, if you like? Why? What's the mindset that they're battling with?
Gosh, there could be so many. I mean, well, let's think about delegation classically. Why do people not do that? I can do the job better. I can do the job more quickly rather than explaining it. I really worry about the quality of the job. I own the company. I really understand this better than anybody. My solution is probably the best solution. Yeah, there's so many, and people are human. People are human. And some humans are a bit more of an asshole than other humans, to be honest.
Language.
But that's the truth. Also, there's certain characteristics. So I am quite energetic. I like change. I like seeing things move around. And sometimes I get into do mode, control mode, and I have to consciously stop myself. I don't always do it right, so I have to consciously stop myself from.
Well, here's my take. I feel that sometimes it's a case of, I have to take accountability for this, because I have also heard this in the trenches where it's like, you know what, I'm worried about what's going on because I have to be accountable. And that is why. And then sometimes people just feel, it's weakness to let go of that, which really it isn't. And I like the fact that you said, we really, really need to think differently at a time like this, especially given the way we are now working.
Absolutely.
We really, really need to take a step back and say, what do we need now? How do I need to show up as a manager, as a leader? What's the, behavior that would really, add value and help create a safe environment, an environment where people can be, can come to work fully and be innovative and everything positive that we want to happen. We really need to be thinking about that now. But that issue of accountability, I find that coming up a lot. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think about races,
racing. Yeah.
I hate them. Anything that's like algebraic to work out who's doing what gets on my nerves generally.
But it does come in handy when you have a few stakeholders to manage. You really need to know where to put your energy. You just don't want to. You really need to know where to put your energy, don't you?
Totally agree. Stakeholder management is something you should pay particular attention to. I totally agree. But all stakeholders are enfranchised. I think the accountability one is quite interesting. As often as I see people grabbing it to themselves, me, I have the final say. I see lots of people pushing it away, saying, no, that's actually Mary who's accountable for that. So there's a sort of deferment of responsibility and accountability. And I don't have the answer to it, but I think, I'm seeing it less. I think there is a genuine improvement. I am noticing smaller companies, I see it a bit more. The owner proprietor, it is a difficult thing to let go of. It's your baby. You brought this together.
It's the command center, it's the power center, isn't it?
But it's your whole life. It's probably absorbed you for 15 years. It's not easy. When it was 3 of you, fine. When there's 250, you have to be practical. But it's an emotional hard thing.
And I like the fact that you said this is probably something they've been doing for 15 years or 20 years. And this is what I say sometimes. This is the mindset that they have applied for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
They've worked with amazing organizations and they have been successful with that behavior.
Yep. There you go.
They have been very, very successful with that command and control and holding on to power and telling everybody what to do. They have been successful with that behavior. Agreed. But this is not a behavior that can take them into the future.
No.
That is the whole point, right?
And there are lots of studies now. There's a lot of
Yeah.
evidence about the cost of those more destructive behaviors, not letting go, bullying people, being disrespectful for people, patronizing and so on, so me. And, you know, it's expensive. And I think organizations are getting alive to that. And also a lot of people, I wouldn't really, I mean, I have worked for people like that in the 70s, 80s and the 90s. And frankly, it's a good reason to move on. So, and also in my experience, a lot of those people don't survive very well because they don't have the corpus of support of people working in the organization. They're not looking to help you. They're not looking to help you. And that's a bad place to be when you need help. There will always be time you will need help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a question for our audience, if you don't mind, if you can oblige me. Have you ever been part of an organization where leadership ruled by fear? And how did it make you feel? This is for the audience, please, if you don't mind. I would love to see your reaction. I often like to engage with the audience. Have you ever been part of an organization where leadership ruled by fear? Because you see, this is actually a thing. Some leaders, in fact, the moment you see them, they come in, they want you to be shaking like a leaf. Some people actually have that mindset where they enjoy the fear factor that they put about. I think some people actually enjoy it. And this is what I say. If you are my boss, then already there is that authority, should I say relationship there. You already have authority because you're the one probably doing my performance appraisal. You're the one that's going to approve my promotion and all of that. So the fear of authority is already there, whether we like it or not. So what I say to leaders is this: that is already there. You don't want to amplify that. If you amplify that, then you're just going to kill, because people will come in, they will not commit, they will comply, there will be compliance. There will be compliance, but there will be no commitment. Again, this comes to waste. I think we have some answers. Again, it is a case of waste. Malay says, yes, I have. Let me just bring that up. I can't agree with you more, Ian. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I have, and it made me feel so isolated. There you go.
Yeah, it's very destructive. Really out there bullying behavior is incredibly destructive.
Absolutely.
And totally. But it's not always. We talk about the obvious examples, but it's not always easy to say truth to power in less aggressive organizations, because you look like a maverick or a troublemaker. You're not quite marching with the rest, and that's something that leadership and management teams have to be very alert to, I think, now. The people who are asking difficult questions that you're uncomfortable answering are probably an asset that you should pay a little bit more attention to.
Exactly. It's not always easy to have those difficult conversations, but for the most part, those conversations, they are quite uncomfortable. And as a coach, I've been in those situations so many times. And what I say is we really need to get to the point where we can start having those conversations. Yes, uncomfortable they may be, but we need to have those conversations. And for me, that is one of the attributes of a high-performing team. For me, because if we can start having those difficult, uncomfortable conversations where we can have radical candor, where we can critique one another. But again, it depends on how much effort we have put into creating a safe environment in the first place, I guess. So if we have put enough effort into creating a safe environment, then I guess the protocols are known to everybody. And what it means to have a safe environment is, a shared understanding, so to speak. And I think in those circumstances, it becomes easier to have those difficult conversations. Let's see. I'm just trying. Okay, someone has another. Ruling by fear is a question of time Before you know it, fury will replace it. Absolutely. And people will leave, especially today.
You think so? Although a lot of people won't leave. It's amazing how much bad behavior people will tolerate. But there's an interesting thing about this, by the way. The people who are bullies, all that anger in themselves is destructive too.
Yeah.
Someone I worked with a long, long time ago, he was a very angry person. He seemed to me all the time. He did pass away with a heart attack. And, you know, I see no joy in that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying being angry was the reason for it, but I can't help but think you had a part of that. You don't need that in your life.
You don't.
You know, we are by nature people who like to work with people. We like
Absolutely.
to, and yeah, we might have the alphas and but by and large, we're sociable people. We are social people, whether we're introverts or extroverts. So, you know, let's optimize that collaboration rather than impinge on it with bad behavior.
Absolutely. One last question for you, Ian. What is the one skill set a leader today must have in their leadership toolkit? One. I've got mine. I know we need so many, but what is the one that you would say?
I'm terrible at the one game. You know, if someone said to me, "What's your top 10, you know, favorite songs?" I'd have 100 David Bowie ones before I could even get down to everything else. I have thought about that a lot, and so the words that came to me were the two that struck me quite quickly. One was empathy, and one was resilience. Actually, empathy isn't just about standing in the shoes of others; it's the understanding and empathizing with the world around you. I think the resilience one, consistency, is also important. It's hard, and you want to be consistent. People want to know where you are, and we've got some tough times to go through. Don't kill yourself with work, by the way. But I think I'm going to go for empathy, reluctantly. There's so many people, and that's probably a quality rather than a skill. But you know, I'm going to go for empathy.
I'm going to go for vulnerability.
Oh, I like that one.
I'm going to go for that because I think now more than ever, it is important for leadership to, you know, it's okay to be vulnerable. It doesn't make you weak. It does not make you weak at all because nobody has the answer today. Nobody has the answer.
By the power of our example.
Yeah, that's it. No one has the answer. We are slowly coming to the end of this show, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this.
I do hope so.
My takeaway for the audience today is this: fear freezes creativity and initiative. As a leader, if you put fear about, you're going to get compliance instead of commitment. So this is not what we want to do at all. So if you're a leader, be mindful of that. How do you want to show up? Especially when you are somebody's boss, you have people working for you. Bearing in mind that you already have that, you know, authority, and that fear of authority is already there naturally. You don't want to amplify that. So be mindful of how you show up. Be aware of the stance you want to take as a leader. Because if you don't, there will be a lot of waste going on and people will not engage, and you will not get the best out of the people you're paying for. You're paying for their brains. My last guest was talking about being the CEO of your brain. So be the CEO of your brain and let people be the CEO of their brains by creating the right environment for them to be productive and innovative and add value. I think we have some more comments. We're just going to come to an end now. Nika says, thanks, Ian and Mary. Very good, relevant conversation. Grace says, communication is key. Absolutely.
That's true. But not general communication. It's got to be quite precise, quite specific. I really recommend people look up clean language. I think that's a fantastic way to deal with lots of things you've been talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ian. I usually like to keep to the time box, and we're going to call it an evening now. And to my audience, thank you so much for being here, everybody. Thank you so much. As always, I appreciate your time. I do not take it for granted. Ian, I'll talk to you outside.